After our prelude, Vivian Martin and Nora Bailey will be lighting our flaming chalice. Rob Bell is a former evangelical Christian pastor and writer and motivational speaker. And he's a former pastor because he came to the conclusion that truth was larger than that which evangelical Christianity usually contains. And he came to the conclusion that salvation was open to all people, and he became a universalist. And this is from his writings. How we eat is connected to how we care for the planet, which is connected to how we use our resources, which is connected to how many people in the world go to bed hungry every night, which is connected to how food is distributed, which is connected to the massive inequalities in our world between those who have and those who don't, which is connected to how our justice system treats people who use their power and position to make hundreds of millions of dollars while others struggle just to buy groceries, which is connected to how we treat those who don't have what we have, which is connected to the sanctity and holiness and mystery of our human life and their little human life, which is why we hold up a baby's hand and say to the parents, "It's just so small." Oh, I woke up this morning. Let's sing. Our first hymn is number 153. And we join in the words of our unison affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ley. Este es nuestro gran pacto, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en el amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros. So be it.
Well, good morning, everybody. Just another quiet day here at First Parish. Holy moly, have we got stuff going on. I am pleased to welcome you on Groundhog's Day, on Super Bowl Sunday, or was Groundhog's Day yesterday? No, it's today, right? So what happened? Early spring, I love it. I hope that's true. Well, I'm Deborah Weiner. I'm Interim Director of Religious Education here at First Parish, and we are very glad you are here. If I had unlimited time, I would start asking you what you're having for Super Bowl snacks, but I can't resist this much. How many people are having nachos? Oh man, I gotta do a really thorough poll because there's diversity in this crowd. That's exactly what we like at First Parish, is diversity of all kinds. We welcome you no matter what side of the snack table you like to live on and where you are in the world. We're glad you're here. So, following the service, just make sure that you join us in community hour in the common room that's across the hallway. And you will find there coffee and good conversation. And if you are a visitor, we hope that you will stop by the welcome table that you will find outside these doors, sign up and get our newsletter and find out more about us. Now, I do want to say that if you have been coming for a bit of time, and you have not yet signed this historic membership book, there is an opportunity for you to do this. This is a growing and thriving congregation. We have more children and youth registered in religious education than in a number of previous years. Yay! And lots of big people too. And we would love to have you join us. So this here is the membership book. There are the ministers. They would be so glad to welcome you, and we all would as well. Now, a few more things that are going on today. At noon in room 202, that's on our upper level, the Peace and Justice Committee will be screening the short documentary called Suppressed: The Fight to Vote. This film tells the story of voter suppression in the 2018 Georgia midterm election. That was the one that Stacey Abrams was involved in, remember? Many other states are using the same types of voter suppression tactics to make it difficult for people of color to vote in the 2020 national elections. This is an important topic. Following the film, there will be a discussion of the You the Vote campaign, along with a presentation of actions that you and this congregation can take to help get out the vote. The sponsors invite you to pick up a loaded baked potato that's going to be sold following service at community hour and head upstairs, but there also will be a light lunch served, I am told. Or you can join Reverend Annie Gonzalez-Milliken and me in the common room at noon for a light lunch and for the 5th workshop in our trans inclusion program. This program will be on the role of culture, including church culture, in trans and non-binary exclusion. It should be an interesting program, so you can certainly join us for that. But wait, there's more. We also want you to know that sign-ups are going on after the service for circle suppers. This is a great chance for you to gather with a small group and meet some folks, maybe folks that you have not met before or your friends. So look for Carla Bradford in Community Hour and sign up if you would like to join with some other folks for a good meal. Now, I am told that Sylvie Denny Brown might have an announcement for us. Is that right? Come on up here, Sylvie. Sylvie is a member of our grade 4 and 5. Come on over here, honey. I want you to use this mic. Come on. They are from our Harry Potter and UU class. Go for it.
Hi, First Parish. Our religious education class is dealing with Horcruxes. Horcruxes are a magical element that makes our world a worse place. We are asking you to donate food to the Bedford Food Pantry. We are also asking you to not donate junk food, but donate canned and boxed food. Thank you, and goodbye for now.
Well done. Thank you. So help to fight hunger and support the work of our 4th and 5th grade class as well. That donation box is going to be out both this week and next week, okay? Speaking of next week, I want to remind you that we will have a special presentation here for our worship service. We will welcome Joshua Wolf Coleman, who is a noted actor based in New York City. He is, in fact, currently portraying Barack Obama in a web series. And he is going to offer us a one-person show on the life and times of Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall. So we hope that you will be here for that. That's going to be an amazing production, and children and youth grades 6 and up are warmly invited and encouraged to attend that performance and worship. Well, there are in fact other announcements in this here order of service, which I'm not going to tell you about right now, but I do hope that you'll take time to look at them and check them all out as well. This is a happening place. We're very glad you're here. And now, how about a little music?
The road to freedom is at my feet, down where the crossroads meet. The road to freedom is by my side, up where the angels glide. Oh, freedom calls to me. Come on, brothers, can't you see? Oh, freedom calls to me. Freedom calls to me.
The road to freedom is at my door,
Down by the rocky shore,
the road to freedom is right by me,
up where the birds are free.
oh, freedom calls to me.
Come on, sisters, can't you see? Oh, freedom calls to me. Freedom calls to me.
can't you see? Oh, freedom calls to me. Freedom calls to me. Oh, freedom calls to me. Come on, people, can't you see? Oh, freedom calls to me. It calls me freedom. It calls me freedom.
And now, friends, it's time for our children and youth to head off to their religious education programs and activities. So we invite you to sing them out with a verse of Cat Stevens, If You Want to Sing Out. The words are printed in your order of service.
Good morning. My name is Marge Heckman, and I'm a member of the lay pastoral team here at First Parish. At this time in the service, we pause to allow anyone who would like to come forward and light a candle of joy or concern to do so. And I will remain at the candle stand after the service if anyone would like to light a candle in private. And I'll light one final candle for all the joys and concerns that we keep in our hearts.
Let's take a moment to settle into ourselves. Sometimes I find that it is easier to think my feelings than to feel them. Sometimes I find myself making up a story about my feelings, a story about myself and what I did wrong or what I deserve, a story about others, what they did wrong or what they deserve. Sometimes I find myself asking questions. Sometimes I find myself imagining possibilities, scary possibilities, hopeful possibilities. But we're going to take just a moment to feel our feelings. So let's take a breath. And just see what you notice in your body. Maybe you hold some joy and gratitude from watching the children singing and seeing our community together. Maybe you are holding sorrow as you feel concern about those who we've lit candles for, as you feel concern for folks in your own life. Maybe you feel it in your stomach as a sinking, or in your heart, in your chest like a heaviness. Maybe you feel it in your throat like a tightness. Maybe you feel nervous, anxious about some unfolding circumstance in your life or the lives of others, like a fluttering in your stomach, like a quickening in your chest. Maybe you're feeling calm and connected, like your shoulders are coming down and you're sinking with greater gravity into the pew, into this moment where you can take some time. Whatever it is, just notice. Notice where there is energy and calm in your body. These feelings are important and they are a message, so we thank them. We thank our bodies for having a deep way of knowing and for telling us important information. Sometimes it is easy to skate through life and ignore those messages. And today, as we try to focus on things that sometimes go unspoken of, throughout the service, I invite you to recheck in again with your body. Notice what messages it's sending and what you are feeling. In this noticing, we can be more in touch with ourselves and with the spirit that flows through and between us and in all of creation, a way to be in touch with the holy. May we do that regularly. Amen.
We have two readings this morning, and Renee will be reading the first, which comes from Ta-Nehisi Coates, Between the World and Me.
Slavery is not an indefinable mass of flesh. It is a particular, specific enslaved woman whose mind is as active as your own, whose range of feeling is as vast as your own, who prefers the way light falls in one particular spot in the woods, who enjoys fishing where the water eddies in a nearby stream, who loves her mother in her own complicated way, thinks her sisters talks too loud, has a favorite cousin, a favorite season, who excels at dressmaking and knows inside herself that she is as intelligent and capable as anyone. Slavery is this same woman born in a world that loudly proclaims its love of freedom and inscribes this love in its essential texts, a world in which these same professors hold this woman a slave, hold her mother a slave, her father a slave, her daughter a slave. And when this woman peers back into the generations, all that she sees is the enslaved. She can hope for more. She can imagine some future for her grandchildren, but when she dies, the world, which is really the only world she can ever know, ends. For this woman, enslavement is not a parable. It is damnation. It is the never-ending night, and the length of that night is most of our history. Never forget that we were enslaved in this country longer than we have been free. Never forget that for 250 years, Black people were born into chains, whole generations followed by more generations who knew nothing but chains.
And this from the Tao Te Ching, purported to have been written by Lao Tzu, chapter 11. 30 spokes share the wheel's hub. It is the center whole that makes it useful. Shape clay into a vessel. It is the space within that makes it useful. Cut doors and windows for a room. It is the holes which make it useful. Therefore, profit comes from what is there, usefulness from what is not there. Now, in introduction of our offering, I had thought, well, maybe I could make some reference to the Super Bowl and how curious I am who will win the Cy Young Award. No reaction to that whatsoever? Or, oh yeah, it's the Stanley Cup. That's right. That's what gets decided today. I had thought about Groundhog's Day, and we could do the offering and do it again. Do it again. Do it again until we get it right. But no, in fact, what I'm going to do is ask Jerry Ross, who is with our Social Responsibility Council, to introduce Andrea, who will speak about our sharing the plate this morning with Dignity in Asylum.
As you know, and as John has said, once a month, First Parish shares its offering with a worthy cause in the community. And the Social Responsibility Council has the task of selecting these recipients. And this month, we are delighted to share our offering with Dignity in Asylum. And I'd like to introduce to you one of the co-founders of Dignity in Asylum, Andrea Hewitt, who will tell you more about this local organization that for the past years has been providing support to people who leave terrible conditions in other lands and undertake the arduous journey of coming here to build a new life. And when Andrea is finished, we'll accept the offering, and I hope you'll be generous in your support to First Parish and to this worthy cause. Andrea?
Well, thank you so much for sharing the plate with us today. Dignity in Asylum is a very small local nonprofit organization that my friend Sharon and I started 5 years ago. We're based in Concord. And we started it together to offer safe and welcoming housing to some of the people who flee persecution in their home countries and seek a safe haven here in the United States. People come here to seek asylum when their lives are in danger in their home countries. Most people seeking asylum used to be changemakers in their home countries. They used to be journalists, human rights activists, lawyers, or healthcare workers who dared to support vulnerable or marginalized populations. They ask for protection in this country because in their home countries, their governments threatened their lives because of the work they did. However, when asylum seekers arrive here, there is no support system in place for them. There is really, literally nothing in place for people seeking asylum. People seeking asylum cannot receive any government-funded support, which means that resettlement agencies such as the International Institute or Catholic Charities or other big organizations in the Boston area cannot take on asylum seekers as their clients because they are not allowed to receive any government-funded support. So when people fleeing persecution in their home countries arrive here and don't already have a network of friends or family in this country, they really fall through all the cracks. They don't have a right to legal representation, they cannot find housing, and they can't even get food stamps or any support like that. We have had guests who slept in cars in the winter, who slept in empty stairwells of apartment buildings, who slept in unheated garages on the cement floor just because they couldn't find housing. And many of them end up in very abusive, dangerous housing situations or in homeless shelters. And that's why Sharon and I founded Dignity in Asylum to offer safe and welcoming housing to some of the many people fleeing persecution. 5 years ago, we rented one apartment in Maynard where we could house 3 women, and we have been able to expand since. We are currently renting 3 apartments where Dignity in Asylum is the tenant in Acton, and West Concord, and we're supporting 2 rooms in roommate situations in Roslindale and Burlington. In the past 5 years, we've housed around 40 guests. Once they receive their work authorization, they transition out, and we can take another person in from the wait list. Most of our guests come from countries in Africa, from Uganda, from Cameroon, from DRC Congo, from Rwanda, from Sudan. But we've also had guests from Central America, Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and from India, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia. We are currently housing 9 guests in the 5 different locations, and we're housing 4 children at the moment. So once we are able to offer a room of their own to our guests, they stay with us for free. They have their own room. We provide housing, transportation. We help with paying for phones, and we match them with a mentor and volunteer in our organization. Our organization is run by volunteers only. Sharon and I are volunteers, and of course our volunteers are volunteers. So all the money we receive in donations goes directly to our program to pay for rent. That's the biggest bulk of what we have to pay each month, for food, for transportation, and for phones. So thank you so much for having us here and for sharing the plate with us today. And I would also like you to know what a huge impact it has for our guests to know that local communities support them, because the current political climate is incredibly scary, especially for immigrants and especially for asylum seekers who don't have any protections yet. And to know that people like you want them to do well, to be safe, and to be able to rebuild their lives really means a lot to them. So thank you so much.
Our offering will gratefully be received. Sharon McDonald is our town and church historian.
Nicholas Bowes Bedford's first minister, served from 1730 to 1754, when there was a rift in theological matters between him and the church, and his ministry ended. To the Church of Christ in Bedford, brethren, under the present situation of affairs in the town, I apprehend that my usefulness as a minister is at an end among you. Therefore, I desire that you would give me a dismission, and that the relation between me and you as a pastor and a people shall entirely cease. Nicholas Bowes, August 1754. Well, he joined the army as a chaplain, was sent to Fort Edwards in New York, and on the march back, he had a fatal stroke and died in Warren and was buried there. His will said, I give and bequeath unto Lucy, my wife, and to her heirs forever, my Negro woman, Nanne. And then what happened? Was Nanne sold? Was Nanne freed? Did Nanne die? I can find no further word of her. It's incredible to believe that a woman living in Bedford was enslaved. But more incredibly, she was not alone in her servitude. I have found these names: Abraham, Abraham's son Jack, Abraham's grandson Cyrus, Cambridge Moore, Caesar Jones, Jeffrey Hartwell, Tory Moore, Pomp, Tony, Ishmael, Cuff, Domire, Quimbo, Tory, and more with no names remembered, people living enslaved and then buried in unmarked graves in the African reservation, in the area in the northeast corner of the old burying ground, in the area reserved for African Americans. Slavery was quite legal in Massachusetts. Massachusetts was the first colony to legalize slavery. There shall never be any bond, slavery, villanage, or captivity amongst us, unless it be lawful captives taken in just wars, and such strangers as willingly sell themselves or are sold to us. Now, this was amended in 1670 to say that children born of a slave are slaves themselves. The first documented slave ship to arrive in Massachusetts Bay Colony was the ship Desire, which arrived in 1638 with African men and women and boys and girls for sale. It was also the first slave ship to carry slaves, Pequot Indians, captured and prisoners of war, out of Massachusetts, also in 1638. The Bedford tax valuation of 1771 lists 7 servants for life. The 1780 Massachusetts Constitution does not mention slavery as such, but the rights laid out in the document were used to set the legal precedent which ended slavery. And the Bedford census of 1790 counted no African American slaves, and slavery in Bedford had disappeared.
This morning will not be the first morning that you or I have found ourselves in church longer than we expected. I appreciate your patience. Last summer, I read a dazzling book by Robert McFarlane titled Underland. We are accustomed to pay attention to the things above land, what we can see, the landscape, the built environment, you and me. Underland is about what we do not readily see. Underground caverns, catacombs, caves, mines, deep and dark, enveloping woods and thickets, and the people we do not see. In London and Paris, New York and Boston, beneath where alabaster cities gleam, there is a nearly invisible parallel universe of sewers and shafts, subterranean ways and their habitués, people who live there. Often this phenomena is true of history and our experience. We see you and me, not others. We only see what seems obvious, and we do not see what we do not wish to see or what others do not want us to see. And so we meet on this town common, made historic as the mustering ground for the Minutemen who fought in the American Revolution on behalf of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for white propertied men. Inscribed on our beloved Bedford flag, carried to the Old North Bridge in 1775, are the words, Vince aut morire, conquer or die. Who conquered? Who was conquered? Who died? It was the white British settler colonials who conquered the native peoples who lived here, the Wampanoag, Nipmuc, Pennacook, and others, and who thus brought death, subjugation, keening unhappiness, and genocide to indigenous Americans. In King Philip's War and the French and Indian Wars, it was men, of course, who did most of the killing, but in 1704, it was a woman, Mary Lane, who shot and killed with impunity. There was a colonial garrison just up North Road where the Habitat for Humanity homes are now. And looking through a window in the roof of that garrison, Mary Lane thought she saw something suspicious behind a stump. A soldier refused to take Mary seriously, and so she grabbed his gun and she fired it, and the history book records, quote, a dead Indian rolled into view, unquote. I wonder what his name was. Confirming the conquest of the natives by the settler colonials, Bedford was incorporated in 1729 with the requirement that a school and a meeting house be built right here, and a learned man of good conversation be installed as its minister. Bedford's first minister was Nicholas Bowes, and he lived just over there. I can almost see his house, the Dominie Manse, now Nat Brown's law offices. Nicholas Bowes lived there with his family and with a young woman whom Bowes had purchased and enslaved as his servant. Her seldom spoken name was Nanne. Her name was Nanne, and she was enslaved. Today, beneath the plaque that honors Nicholas Bowes, we dedicate that new small plaque in remembrance of Nanne. And as our act of dedication, I ask you to stand as you are able, and together we will say her name. Let us say her name. Nanne. Let's say it again. Nanne. And now, as if we are calling her name out across a great meadow. Let us shout her name. Nanne! Again. Nanne! And now let us lean close to Nanne and whisper her name. Nanne. And whisper it again. Nanne. And now, in the echoing silence as Nanne's name is inscribed upon our hearts, let us bear witness as Renee Nichols, on behalf of all Nanne's descendants, and I, as a descendant of Nicholas Bowes, place wreaths of remembrance by the plaques that now recognize both. We say, we see you, we recognize ourselves in you. Your history is our history. We will not forget. We remember. And you may stay standing. Be seated, please. Ta-Nehisi Coates said, "Slavery is not an indefinable mass of flesh. It is a particular, specific, enslaved woman whose mind is as active as your own, whose range of feeling is as vast as your own, who prefers the way the light falls in one particular spot in the woods, who enjoys fishing where the water eddies in a nearby stream, who loves her mother in her own complicated way, thinks her sister talks too loud, has a favorite cousin, a favorite season, who excels at dressmaking and knows inside herself that she is as intelligent and as capable as anyone." How old was Nanne? A teenager? Did she marry or have children? Did she grow old? When did she die? Where is she buried? Was she well treated or abused? As if it can be said that an enslaved person could be well treated. Or if it can be said that enslavement is anything else but abuse. What would Nanne think of our singing, "If you want to be free, be free"? What would Bowes think? In further recognition of Nanne, Bowes, and their complicated legacy, there are baskets of rosemary that are about to be passed among you. Rosemary, the herb, is symbolic of remembrance, and it may be crushed and smelled or dried and made into tea or used as seasoning and eaten. May its fragrance and taste recall the particular, specific, enslaved woman we know as Nanne. In 1641, as Sharon said, Massachusetts was the first colony to legalize slavery. By the mid-1700s, nearly 1 in 10 people in colonial Boston was enslaved. It was common for ministers to have enslaved servants. Even later in the 18th century, at the time of the Revolution, the minister in Concord enslaved 3 persons. The British scorned that minister's calls for liberty and called out his hypocrisy. The anti-slavery movement in Britain was much more advanced than in America, and slavery there would be abolished in 1833. Only recently have I learned that one of the many causes of the American Revolution was the defense of slavery. You know, that isn't much mentioned in our history books or on Patriots' Day or pole capping day. Colonial officials encouraged enslaved people to seek their freedom by fleeing to British lines. Many of the enslaved came to see the struggle as one between their freedom and their continued subjugation. In the 1775 Dunsmore Proclamation, the governor of Virginia offered freedom to any enslaved person who fled their plantation and joined the British Army. Historian Jill Lepore writes, "Not the taxes and not the shots at Lexington and Concord, not the siege of Boston, rather it was Dunsmore's offer of freedom to slaves that tipped the scales in favor of American independence." New England's obvious and much celebrated industry, think of the cotton mills of Lowell and Lawrence, was entirely dependent on and complicit with the enslavement of black Africans. White supremacy was enforced by de jure and de facto segregation, and it is no accident that these suburbs, even unto the present day, are predominantly white and wealthy due to redlining by realtors and the post-World War II exclusion of African Americans from the benefits of the GI Bill. There is an underland subterranean history hidden in Bedford and these suburbs and our country and our world. This beautiful Bedford is a perfect example of what James Baldwin once called the sunlit playpen of white American existence. We live in such a playpen. Those who challenge this status quo, be they people of color or immigrants or Jews or gay people or journalists and truth tellers, and who knows who will be next, they may be threatened, intimidated, and quite possibly killed. We live in a country racked by racism, misogyny, militarism, xenophobia, rapacious capitalism, and a federal government of kakistocrats. That is my new favorite word, kakistocracy, which means government by the least suitable, the least competent, the very worst people imaginable. They whose words and deeds defend the rich, white, male, and powerful, they who fan the flames of hatred and misery, and they who promise death to any who would challenge their supremacy. Last summer, I was in Selma, Alabama, where the cemetery is bedecked in Confederate flags, and where in 2002, when a black person was first elected mayor of Selma, the good white citizens of Selma, in response, erected a bust of Nathan Bedford Forrest, the founder of the KKK. In 2002, in no uncertain terms, that statue says, mess with white supremacy and you will be lynched. And again, it was James Baldwin who said, there are too many things we do not wish to know about ourselves. Indeed, shielded from our eyes, there is a parallel universe of agony and oppression. It is past time for us to see the history that is hidden under land, obscured by thickets of myth and wishful thinking. Here we see you and me. Who here do we not see? This is not just a sermon about the poison of white supremacy that still laces our water. This is not just a sermon about Nanne, nor is it just about Bose, whom we do not castigate, for first we must remove the beam out of our own eye, and then we may see clearly to remove the speck out of our brother's eye. Rather, this is a sermon about all that is underland and unseen, the aspects of ourselves to which we are blind or willfully ignorant. I digress but slightly to say that we live in an apocalyptic time. You know, after my very first sermon as a student minister in Akron, Ohio, a long time ago, everyone was given an index card to give me feedback, and of course, I was told to stand up straight and to stand to be seen, speak up to be heard, and sit down to be appreciated. But somehow in that sermon, I mentioned the word apocalypse, and I received a card from a man who had once studied for the priesthood, and on his card he wrote, "Preach that sermon all your life." I still have that card someplace, and every once in a while I wonder what the heck he meant. And so this week I looked up the word apocalypse, and it is a Greek word meaning revelation, an unveiling or unfolding of things not previously known and which could not be known apart from the unveiling. Today is an apocalyptic moment in the life of this congregation. We are unveiling a hidden history not previously known. We live in an apocalyptic time in our nation and our world. We are seeing things that have long been hidden. Perhaps this could also be an apocalyptic time in your own personal life. Perhaps you may see things hitherto unseen. But you know, apocalypse is what we really are all about and what we should really be about all the time. Here, we reveal and unveil that which is hidden or which we have been willfully ignorant. Here together, we try to reveal the truth about ourselves individually, systemically, collectively. We expose the cruelty of family separation, the sins and prejudice and greed and corruption, the chasm of inequalities. We lament and confess how we ourselves fall short of the admonitions of conscience and spirit. We are not the people we want to be. Here, too, we affirm that hope abides, that there is health in us, and that while prayer may not change a thing, prayer does change people, and people do change things, and thus we pray for the coming of the apocalypse and for revival in each and every one of us and in those we do not yet see. In the Tao Te Ching, we heard 30 spokes share the wheel's hub. It is the center hole that makes it useful. Shape clay into a vessel. It is the space within that makes it useful. cut doors and windows for a room. It is the holes which make it useful. Therefore, profit comes from what is there, usefulness from what is not there. Someone else has said, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about, including each and every one of us. I fight such battles, and I know you do also. Thus, this is a sermon about humility, a sermon about recognizing and confessing all that we do not know, a sermon that asks the question, who is not in this room? Young people, old people, people of color, people of differing abilities and genders and addictions, people of differing opinions. What of ourselves do we not see? Yes, we too often speak in an echo chamber. How might we see and hear and feel those not in the room and evident? How may we bring to the center those who presently are at the margins? How may we decenter those who are privileged? How may we see ourselves as we are? These are questions for you, for me, for each of our families, for this congregation, this community, this country. May we call things by their true names. May we not be blinded in this sunlit playpen of white experience. Once more, let us say Nan's name. Nanne. May we ask and humbly answer who and what is not here, what is not evident, underland, unseen. We are people of faith who affirm that which was said in our opening words. We are connected to how we treat those who don't have what we have. We are connected to how we treat those who don't have what we have. We are connected to Nanne, and we are connected to Nicholas Bowes, and we are connected to the lives of those in our families and our communities, remembered and forgotten, which is connected to the sanctity and holiness and mystery of all life, and we are connected to our very own striving and struggling human lives, and we are connected to the very littlest of human lives, which is why we hold up a baby's hand and say, it's just so small. I wish I knew how. Our hymn is number 151. words of my colleague Mark Morrison read, may we dedicate ourselves to the proposition that beneath all our diversity and behind all our differences, there is a unity which makes us one and binds us forever together in spite of time and death and the space between the stars. Let us pause in silent witness to that unity. May it be so.